Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Steve, and today I'm joined by this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening?
Wonderful, I guess.
I just figured I'd, leave a little bit of a cliffhanger right there.
Yeah. Oh, is that what you were doing? It was totally over my head, but
It's all right. It's all right. I wasn't expecting everybody would catch it, which is why I explain it, and explaining.
Yeah. I blame that. I'm down with the sickness because my whole family's been sick since like Christmas. Well, it started with Christmas and my daughter. It's like I've been to 2 cons and avoided any kind of con crud whatsoever. But children are plague bearers.
Yeah. I get it. I've been thankful so far. I'm not going, the wood of the shelf back here. Our family's been, family has been, safe.
Cool. Yeah. So
it is what it is.
It is what it is. So I feel like I'm a bit on the mend now. Hey, we got Philadelphia Piper in the chat. Are you indeed from Philadelphia? Right across the bridge from you there, Ted.
That's right. Yeah.
Ted could hit the bridge with a stone from where he lives, pretty much.
Well, I'd have to get a good stretch before I throw it. But,
yeah. For sure. So yeah, we're talking about cliffhangers, and I think Doug pitched this one, and I was actually shocked that we hadn't done cliffhangers before already.
Well, it makes a lot of sense, and I'll go full disclosure. For the longest time, I always felt like when I was DMing that I had to have everything wrapped up in a neat little bow at the end of a session, so that you didn't have things hanging on because you don't know, what happens if somebody doesn't show? What happens if? And within the last couple of years, that the concept, and I'm giving you 100% of the credit of cliffhangers, that they do an amazing thing for a DM. I look at some of the stuff that you've done and that I've done in kind, where you literally have the ability to be like, all right, here's this crux moment. I have no idea what's going to happen next, but you know what? We'll find out next time. And I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it depends too. Like, I feel way more confident in our stream games when I do that, because we've got a pretty solid crew, and rarely do we have it where where someone doesn't show up. But in our home games, it is a bit trickier because you just never know, right? Like, if someone's not going to show up. And honestly, I even had it in one of my stream games, and I ended on a cliffhanger. Like, it was in the Scarlet Sisterhood. They're about to confront, or they get confronted by the Monarch in an alley or in the streets or whatever. And then we end it right there. And then one of the players doesn't show up, is out, whatever reason, they just can't make it. So I come up with this elaborate reason why they're not going to be there. And we start playing, and they just started getting into it, and I forgot to even give the reason, and it never came up. No one asked, and that was just another thing that just made me realize it doesn't matter. Like, I know some GMs are so the integrity of my story, continuity, all that stuff. It's got, your players don't care. Nobody cares. You're literally the only one that cares. Everyone else is just happy to be at the table playing the game, right? So what, you can come up with elaborate reasons, you can not come up with the reasons, you can still do the cliffhangers, and sometimes I just weave it into the tale itself, right? I've definitely have had to do that, where it was that same game where two of the players went off into the woods by themselves, and then one of them didn't show up for the next session, and I'm like, okay, this could be bad. What now? Because literally, there's a monster. We left off with a monster. I'm sorry, guys. I'm blowing out the mic, I'm told. I will crank it down for you guys so that I'm not blowing out the mic so much. And so you can hold your headphones away from you and listen. But yeah, I was like, what am I going to do? We end it with a monster coming out. of of the brush, and one of the players is not here. Sigh. So I do what I
and
always
those
do. I turn that player not being in it there into the adventure somehow.
exactly. You have that monster like they reach down, they grab the player that's not there, and just run off. And now you got a chase scene. You got a whole thing. Does the monster get away? Does it not get away? Like there's so many creative ways to use the elements that because you really don't know exactly what's going to happen until people sit down at that table. And like for me, I ran a recent game with the Untraditionally Arcane streamed game right here on this channel. 2 sessions ago, they ended with them snapping the stone and them teleporting, and and everything goes dark. And we'll find out what happens next time when you get back. And it's been a crux of the adventure that able to kind of teleport back to safety once the fraction of the mission has been complete, and they can move on to the next location. Well, I knew I wanted to do something somewhere within the game where somebody mucked with the stones and they don't go to where they want to go. Well, I ended with this moment of indecision, and I had no idea what I was planning to do. Was I going to use it now? Was I going to use it later? Am I going to use it now and later? What was I going to do? And the session wound up going, and we were down a player. So that moment of while you're going, well, the player who didn't make it, well, they slowly got further and further away from the party. And I just described it was that character who was the one who activated the stone. Nobody called me on it, whether it was a change of agency or what have you. That's where the story went, and it fit of how that character didn't go with them to this alternate dimension, and the shenanigans that they got up to, throughout that. But when you've got these moments where you can give that time frame of, well, if I have an idea of where things could go, it's open to more interpretation and more figuring out in between sessions than having to come up with those right there at the table because you ended at a safer spot than when things are moving forward.
It also means too when you start playing again, it's going to be a slow start, right? When you end on a cliffhanger, like you guys are just getting right into it. And I mean, we've done, I think we've even done videos kind of about this where, as far as pacing goes, if you can start on a high and end on a high, I think it creates really nice peaks and valleys in the story, beats for that session, for the evening. And I think gets you better engagement from your players, and then they're like excited about what's going on next, or maybe they even kind of forgot what was going on because like a lot of our games are monthly, and they're like, oh, when they realize like where things were left off.
So like those moments are great, and whether let's start off with initiative, like you're in it, it's like it's combat time, let's go do this. It makes it more enjoyable for the player, and it makes it more enjoyable for, I believe, the viewers as well. So not all games have to be looked at as what how a viewer looks at it, but first and foremost, you're playing a game, and the players, the characters that are there, like they need to be having a good time too, and moments that are punchy.
I feel like we've definitely gotten into a rhythm for a while where we were trying to do episodic sessions just because it's like, well, we're playing monthly, and there's always like months where someone's not going to show up, so it just kind of like made sense to try and like keep it all contained. For that reason, it does make it easier. Or you can just like hand wave it and be like, who cares?
F it, as the age old session, the age old adage goes. And for the most part, that's what I try to do is like, all right, I'm gonna look at, this is how it is. Let's have fun. Let's tell a good story, and whatever doesn't make sense, we'll figure it out later.
Park says the best cliffhangers are, or have the players contacting you all week for the mini RP session on what they are doing. No, I would disagree. I would say the best cliffhangers are when the players are all getting together and talking behind your back to figure out what they're going to do when the next session starts.
Yeah, when you have players who don't want it to end, when they want everything to keep going and they can't wait for the next session, that's when you know you did it right.
When they're conspiring against the GM. Kurt has definitely been the one to set those up in your game.
Well, I know that there have been a handful of times that it's like, all right, there's been some conversation, hasn't there?
Yeah, well, we got to prepare. We have to be prepared to defeat the DM.
Trust me, it's not that hard.
Or infinitely hard. It just depends on how you look at it.
Or infinitely. I mean, I've got all the minis. I could go ahead and plop them all down. Screw it, one after the other. Eventually,
you do have a lot of minis. Yeah, so we had a session 0 this weekend. Mm-hmm. For the next game that I'm going to be running, and this is for the group that you've been DMing for, and I was like, most of these players haven't gotten to play with you as a player for a long time, and mm-hmm. and I haven't GM'd for a lot of them for a long time as well at this point. So I was like, hey, we had discussed it and decided to switch it up. So I threw out some options, and so we're going to be playing this post-apocalyptic kind of Arcana Punk game that definitely is included and expanded to some things that I wasn't really anticipating.
Okay.
From my initial concept of the game, like, there's going to be racing with vehicles and gladiatorial combat and arenas were things that I wasn't really thinking of having like a huge impact on the campaign, but like kind of came up in the session 0. And then afterwards, Ryan had contacted me. He's like, yeah, here's some ideas for my backstory and some ideas to throw in for just for the world itself, and one of them is ties back to the Vargarians. So I was cool. Like, oh, that is super cool. I'm really digging it.
I honestly, there's been so much going on. I have like a mechanical concept, but I've got very little done with my character because I wasn't certain what direction that we were going. Like, yeah, when we sat down Saturday, I knew that like we were doing Under the Dome, but I also didn't definitively know, like, okay, what is this game going to be? Who's connected? Who, where, what have you? So like now that there's more concept and we've got a little bit of time before, we next meet, it's like, okay, well, I can take this time to really figure this out and, take the advice that's been given to me of, give you a couple bullet points beyond the one character that I've tossed your way, as an NPC and have a lot of fun with, the elements. But I'm excited to see all of us on our modified Devil's Ride that we all get running off of instead of soul power or this other thing called grind. It's going to be a lot of fun to play a D&D motorcycle gang in a apocalyptic future.
Yeah, we will definitely see how that all pans out. Definitely, like, I hadn't thought about firearms, but like Ryan's playing an artificer, so he's like, is there firearms? I'm like, I guess there can be, sure. I mean, instead of gunpowder, they'll use grind powder, and it'll be more, a little bit more magic based than traditional black powder and stuff like that. But I'm looking forward to that, and I'm like I'm thinking of some ideas to get things started because like me, I like to start like in the middle of something going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Maybe we'll start in like a pile up of Devil's Rides or something. You guys will be like, all right, you guys will start the game, and I'm like, okay, get ready to make those vehicles checks because you got a Devil's Ride flying in your direction.
It's gonna be amusing to see how all this pans out and whatnot. I mean, it's so such an alien concept of motorcycles and D&D. I mean, I get motorcycles in other games, sure, but D&D, really?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's going to be pretty over the top, and also like I kind of left those guys on a bit of a cliffhanger because I gave them like a very basic primer of the game, and I gave the night before like midnight, like I banged something out, a doc for you guys so that you could like have a more thorough understanding of the area where you guys are playing in.
Yeah, and what then we built upon it during our session zero. I went a lot longer than I was really expecting to. I
Yeah.
figured like, oh, hour or two when we'd be done, and we're 2.5, 3 hours, and it's like, I think it's time to go.
Yeah, we were right around the 3 hour mark, I guess.
But it was done virtual because
It is Avernus style. We're using the vehicles from that world. So Under the Dome is this concept that I had a while ago, and we've played with like a lot of like this idea of chaos magic creates these storms in our world, and this is like the far-flung future where basically most of the world has been ravaged by these storms, and there's these pockets of civilization that live under magical domes to kind of keep the chaos magic out. But like they're very like arcana tech in how these cities are run, and there's factories, and the pitch was kind of like, well, you guys could be scavengers going out into the wastes, getting the materials that the substance, the grind, is made out of, and grind, everything runs on grind. It's kind of like it's like spice in Dune, right? Is I guess the analogy. There may or may not be giant grind worms. I don't know. We'll see. Could happen.
Well, we gotta, our Patreon followers, some time ago, we shared all of the worms that Ted has, all
There's
done up
plenty
in
of
a.
them.
Got plenty of options in that regard.
Matthew Leonard, I like the game Road Rash. Give me a heavy chain whip. It's possible. I mean, pretty open to a lot of different things. Well, we'll see how it goes, especially using the 5e rules. I'm gonna have to see like how much stuff I'm gonna have to modify. I'm gonna have to look in Avernus if they have actual like racing rules or anything, because we decided like there's two types of racing that happens in the dome. One actually happens outside the dome, and it's like a big annual event that like these like the grind barons, which run everything, they're the main ones to participate in it, and then they put their own racers up, and then some of the more wealthy denizens of the city will also put their own racers up. But it happens outside the dome, so also I think like you have like cool chaos stuff happening as well as part of the racetrack, so it's not normal. But then inside the dome, there's illegal street racing, which is what like these guys will probably be more involved with, and they want to work their ways up to the big leagues and being able to race with the big shots.
Wow, so Brian's saying Twisted Metal might be a good source of inspiration.
Yeah, I think there will be a lot of places for me to dig into for inspiration, and so the thing is too, like we play so much D&D, I just like I didn't want to just do what we kind of like always do.
Sure, and all the pitches that you had were something that was in a different direction, and I was pretty happy with all of them. Under the Dome was in my top two for sure. And I think like this has got the capabilities of stretching out into 2 or 3 different video topics as we kind of get into the game and into some of the stuff. It might be later down the road when, we've experienced things and you feel more open to sharing. But doing a video on vehicles racing doing a video on our chaos storms, I think could be all cool things to kind of talk about and go over and come up with mechanics that seem to make sense and work.
Brian mentions we did a tiny bit of dino racing with Eberron 5e for a one shot. It was a bit of a pain of the prep out, but super fun. I think there's an adventure with dinosaur racing in it from Tomb of Annihilation. It's not Tomb of Annihilation, but it was like released on the DM's Guild as like one of the companion things, I think. I remember Sean McGovern talking about it.
I would be down for dinosaur racing whenever.
Yeah. So I might have to find that and check it out to see if there's some inspiration there. Maybe not so much for dinosaurs, but for your devil's rides.
Well, I mean, if you can find a critter that can move as fast as a devil's ride, maybe somebody enters in on a beast.
That I think that would be a bit tough. Maybe haste it. So. The devil's rides are really, I mean, all the vehicles are fast. The slowest one is 100 feet.
Yep.
So, and I thought about like nerfing that, but I was like, you know what? Nah, screw it. I'll let it fly. We'll see what happens. Also, I think it'll be funny to see what happens when you guys hit something going at 120 feet per round. It'll be fine.
It is what it is. I haven't fallen in love with my character yet, so totally like the movie says, he dies.
Park says, have you seen the Boba Fett yet with the speeder bikes? There's been some inspiration taken from there. I would say
there's stuff in episode 2 and 3 with Boba Fett with the speeder bikes. I believe we're in some elements. Probably some similarities there. I don't know exactly what our, grind bikes are going to look like. I do believe that for the most part, they're going to be kind of goat and ram themed, if I recall correctly. At least our crew is.
Yeah. Brian Smith says pod racing, Mad Max, Fast and Furious.
Not really into Fast and Furious movies, but I think I saw a couple of them, but there's like 10 or 11 of them now. So.
There's a lot. There's like 50 of them, and they're all ridiculous. Each one is like more ridiculous than the last.
Well, I mean, as you gain levels and that proficiency bonus and expertise and stat applies, I mean, you got to start having things for what happens when they can regularly hit the DC 30.
So to do Fast and Furious in D&D, you have to be playing 3rd edition. So you can, because those people have epic levels with the stuff that they're doing. Like they're hitting those DC 80 and 120 checks regularly.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said, I only watched the first handful.
Yeah. I think the latter ones are better. Like the ones with The Rock in it, with Dwayne Johnson in it. Mm-hmm. But they are ridiculous, and you have to take them with a grain of salt. But I mean, like a lot of movies like that are also really good, like sources of inspiration, for cliffhangers and things of that nature. I think I really started using cliffhangers more in my games just because like the game was almost, the session was almost over, especially like when I was streaming the games. The session was almost over. And I really didn't know what I wanted to have happen next. So I just have something really dramatic happen. And then I'm like, all right, I have a whole week to figure out what that means and what that's going to be.
I should, kind of put out a disclaimer. We always write our newsletter about this topic, and it comes out, a week and a half later. I've already written mine, and I straight up call out that the number of times that exact phrase is like, has been muttered a number of times. Like you end the session and it's like, okay, now I've got, until next month to figure out what that is, what's going on or what have you. So like those moments of drama, that, you hit a tension beat, you really can say, all right, what is going to happen next? And you have time to say, okay, well, I will figure that out in between now and next session, whether it's tomorrow, 3 days from now, a week from now, next month, 2 months from now, it can be done. And it in my mind, it's freeing because like you have some kind of idea of where this is going to catapult off of. Your players. Are they going to go, with a social attempt? Are they going to go with a combat attempt? Do you plot and plan for both, or do you just say like, okay, guys, here's where we ended. What are you thinking? And you could actually have an out of game conversation and have an idea of, what is going to happen next and properly plan for that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things. One, like you said, is like you can have a conversation. The other thing is, it's just like, however often you play, you have that long to let the ideas kind of just percolate. And then the other thing is, the little sneakier thing is like, just listening to your players, after the thing happens and see, because generally they'll speculate out loud.
Yes.
so you can draw some inspiration and get their feedback without actually getting their feedback, and see if they throw out some cool ideas you might want to implement.
Well, I mean, that is always excellent advice. And we've talked about this before, of listen to your players. They're going to talk even when they're not directly talking to you. They're still talking. They're still giving you information that you've got the capacity to say, oh crap, I didn't think that he was thinking that, or that they were going to go in that direction. But you jot your notes down, and you've got incredible things that you can use that they weren't even thinking about giving you. They were just kind of talking out loud to the group.
Brian says
speculation.
Brian says the real trick is knowing when to call an end of a session. On a cliffhanger too, I always push through and think back, oh, that would have been a good spot to end on. Well, me and Ted, like, our style is similar. Like, we don't really do a lot of prep for our games. So whatever that cliffhanger is, we probably just made it up on the spot. But I will say that the one thing you can look for, the cue that you can kind of look for, is like when you're describing stuff and laying stuff out for your players, is pay attention to their reactions. What are they doing? Did they just scooch to the edge of their chair a little bit? Are they leaning forward? Are they like, do you got them kind of like in that trance? Right. That's probably a good spot to be like, and that's where we'll pick up next session. Right. When you got them like that. I mean, obviously, you want to make sure you're far enough into your session to do that. But I would look for cues from them and let them kind of tell you what a good spot for a cliffhanger is. I mean, obviously, if they're like playing on their phones and building dice towers, then that's not like the best time. So watch for the body language.
And that's the other thing. If you're watching, if you're listening, when they're talking, when they're doing stuff, you're going to be able to have things to take away. And I think it's an important thing.
Parks, do you have to have land vehicle tool proficiency, able to ride a devil's ride effectively? So, I would say technically for most of the proficiencies in 5e, if you don't have it, it just means you don't get your proficiency bonus. Now, like as a GM, sometimes I'll be like, I think you really need to know how to do this. But a driving type skill, if it's something that a lot of people do in your world, or any skill really, if it's something a lot of people do in the world, or it's something it's reasonably seen done often, then I would say they would be able to do it. They just wouldn't get the proficiency bonus. So they would be slightly worse at it than someone who's trained in it. I actually just gave everyone vehicles land. Like, I wasn't going to, but I was like, you know what, it's literally one of the like tool proficiencies in languages you can just pay and learn. And since they're not starting at first level, we're starting at third level. I was just like, you know what, it fits with the game that we're playing and what we're doing. Everyone can just take land vehicles.
Yeah, I had done some some pre-game research of like, I had put together my character. I knew I was interested in playing a sorcerer. I was gonna kind of be the face of our gang. be the talker. But I looked through all of the background options, and I'm like, all right, there's only 8, and 3 of them are the Eberron house agent things. So I'm like, really? It's like you got athlete, folk, hero, marine, mercenary, veteran, and soldier are the only way you're really going to get the vehicles land. I knew I was not interested in folk hero because I had done that as the last one for Dave's game. And I'm like, I don't want to do the same thing 2 times in a row. Let's go in another direction. So like that meant I was going with a very physical character or attached to an organization to some degree. So I was very, very leery about how I was going to put this together. And when he's like, "Oh, I'll just give you land vehicles," I'm like, "All right, scrap all of that. Now what are my options?"
Yeah, well, and also like because of the direction that Session Zero kind of went in, it also just kind of made sense.
Sure, and
there's definitely some unexpected twists and turns. And one of the is like, "Hey, 3 of us are like fighter bruiser types. What if we're all gladiators?" And we were one in a bet.
I like when you had said you were one in a bet. Like I wasn't expecting it to be like one of the other players who won them. Like I'm like, oh, this is gonna link us to whoever. Like no, it's like no, it's Ryan's character. He owns 3 people. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be weird.
I think Kurt actually pitched that though.
Sure. I think that happened when I stepped off to go deal with a child issue.
Oh yeah.
Because like I came back and like this is going on and that gets said and I'm like, what the hell? Okay, I'm sure I'm friends with this guy. He owns you 3. Yeah. Got it.
It's going to be interesting. And like you said, I think we'll probably end up making a few videos.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun trying to modify our vehicles and see, what kind of either attachments or, things that we can do that might be good, might be bad, who knows. I know kind of my character, I'm eager to see what kind of ridiculous things, which I'm sure was not on your original plan of, a body modification system through, the different things like the Simic hybrid is kind of like the baseline. And then we have on the website, the elemental mutation sorcerer, which is what I'm going to be playing. And I felt like that was an interesting combination. And to have my character, well, I originally started off as human, but that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, so you're like someone's science project. And then like, Ryan's character is playing an artificer, so he wanted to play like a wrencher type character, which kind of really leads into it. And then we've got 2 barbarians
and a strength-based rogue.
Yeah, so it should be interesting.
So the gladiatorial folks they're the meat angle covered. So you guys you get up there, you go do the fighty thing, and I'll throw some spells from back here, and that'll be that.
Grappling hook turning system, maybe, or you guys have to add at something.
Oh man, that'll be fun.
or they'll end up being the ones that get swung around by the grappling hooks.
Yeah, I mean, more than likely. I mean, there was an attempt where somebody loops around in Jedi and explodes into a tree, so it's definitely a possibility.
It's a risky maneuver.
But Brian's got it right there. Removable rods. Just kind of clamp it out behind you and let them crash into it.
Oh yeah, that would be brutal.
Or if you've got one and you're trying to scale onto somebody's vehicle, you just kind of like latch it into place and like boom, now I got a handle I can hold on to.
For an immovable rod?
Yeah, like if you attach it to their vehicle, like they're not going to be able to take it off. I don't think it's like if you put it on something moving, it's going to keep moving.
I
It
don't think
doesn't like.
so. I think the rod stays exactly where it is, and then you deal with the repercussions of that. I think it's very much like it will be very much like putting a stick in the spokes.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, you're the GM in this situation. You get to, interpret it. Um, add at Tiamat so you can make your dragon leather jackets. I be having dragon leather jackets, so kind of cool.
Well, they definitely have been talking about their uniforms. It seemed like a very important thing to some of the players.
I mean, if any of us, would be interested in style, I certainly would.
Yeah. You guys, it was very important. You guys came up with a team name, since you guys are kind of like racer/gang.
Yeah, well, so what are we? The Grotto Gruffs.
The Grotto Gruffs, yeah. So Ryan's artificer is a battlesmith, and he's got a goat. Originally, he wanted to know if the legs to the goat could kind of come together and form wheels, so he could ride the goat. But the goat is the Iron Defender is way slower than a Devil's Ride. It's not even close.
So there was some talk about making modifications, and at first it was going to be like, oh well, we'll just have 2 separate stat blocks and what have you, and it would basically be like a transformer.
Yeah.
But looking at it from that element, it would be like way too powerful. Of like, oh well, as the defender, it can be healed with a cantrip. So like that's incredibly powerful. Of like, oh well, I can just mend my motorcycle. That's wonky.
Yeah. So I think we settled on he's gonna have a sidecar for his goat.
So like the wheels will pop out, so it can just be like, all right, I'm on for the ride, and when you get there, it can kind of just like pop off and do its thing.
Oh, I didn't think of it that way, but I mean that's possible too. Where it does the wheelie mode like you want it to, but it just like attaches to the side. I was actually thinking of sidecar that it sits in.
Oh, okay. I thought it was the sidecar.
Yeah. I gathered that after you started talking. I was like, I didn't think about that. I'm down for either, to be honest with you.
But lots of fun.
Kind of in the vein of like, that game that's coming up. We've got a video coming out Wednesday. It's Dungeons, Dragons, and Mechs. So who knows? There might be some inspiration from there as well.
Sure.
Before you know it, it's gonna be like no holds barred, science fantasy. It's not even gonna remotely resemble a D&D game at all. Who knows?
Well, I mean, I can always pull out the Dark Matter book if we really need to add some extra nonsense into it.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably a couple 5e books with extra nonsense.
That's true. That is certainly true. And if you want to go even further, you start pulling out the Starfinder book.
Yeah, that's true.
We got that too. Even crazier because it's Pathfinder specs.
Yeah, that won't mesh as quite as well. There's probably just literally 5e stuff at this point. Feels like so much stuff has come out.
Sure.
Fights in the garage when you're fixing your ride sounds great. Yeah, so the reason why they're called the Grotto Gruffs is because the grotto is like a public garage where you rent space, you rent bays, but it also has a bar attached to it because why not? So like that's kind of like the central hub where everyone's kind of connected to, and how some of them probably met. I think like the idea is your character and Ryan's character met there, and then Ryan acquired the others as he's trying to put together a crew.
So the Barons, I don't really think they're the bad guys. They're just the people in charge. and they've got each thing that they're kind of attached to. So like there's one person that's in charge of the farms, one person that's in charge of the water, one person that's in charge of the tunnels, because the surface is bad mojo. So like there's trade routes underground from dome to dome. um, uh, it's like I think the fourth one is in charge of the soldiery. It's been a couple of days since I looked at this.
Yeah, one's in charge of the dome itself, maintaining that, and then so they kind of rule the city from their ivory towers, and then also so the city kind of has like three tiers. One is called the spires, and it's kind of like very like Sharn like Eberonish, where all the rich people live way above the ground in these towers that are kind of all connected. And then you have the ground level, and that's where the grind factories are. It's where the street racing is going to happen. That's where the gangs kind of rule the streets. There's not a lot of guards or the watch, and all most of the common folk. And then underground is actually where they do all the farming. They have hatcheries. That's where the water supply is. It's the most protected from everything that's happened in the world. So, the watch's presence is most in the spires and actually in the underground, because the underground is where a lot of the interests are for the barons, like their financial interests. All the barons employ scavengers to go out and find more subs to turn into grind. And then they're the only ones that are officially sanctioned to create grind, and so they kind of monopolize it, and they have their own factories for that. And that's like some of the few areas where there is a high concentration of the watch, right? And it's kind of like secure areas. But then there's also the idea that there's also illicit black markets where you can get like off-brand grind that may be as good or not as good or experimental, right? So, and that's the stuff. And also, I'm very much thinking like a gaslight level of technology. So, but instead of being steampunk or get your actual gas, it's going to be all kind of magic. Yeah, they are. They rule the city, like that. Basically, it's kind of like a democracy between them, sort of, except for no one votes them in. They just are in control, and the houses kind of control everything. Maybe a little bit of inspiration from the dragon marked houses from Eberron. And then there is going to be a lot of like gang activity. There is definitely at least one gang of humanoid uh chinchilla reptile mashed up critters running around. They're the fur, and that's the fur boys.
The fur boys. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be interesting to have some gang on gang violence nonsense going in there, taking some of the typical D&D tropes and turning them on their heads. And it's also going to have some fun of seeing like, okay, well, what is going to be your take on chaos storms and the the dangers out in the wastes, being able to like, oh well, let's modify some monsters, let's bring in some new ones. Like there's so much room for what is this setting offer that other D&D settings don't. And the fact that we are kind of taking this from a concept of, well, this still is the same world, just an alternate reality, a future reality.
After things have gone bad.
To me, like I'm looking for those undertones of remembrance. Like what kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like the little nuggets of
Easter eggs.
Easter eggs, of like, oh well, this is from an earlier game or from we've done, and decades worth of playing kind of sort of in this world. Like you could really put in whatever you feel like that you feel like, attaching to, and seeing if Ted remembers that character or that person or that place or that thing.
Yeah, so but like Ryan definitely added one, and I'm like, oh, there's no way I can't just add this in, and have more stuff evolve around it. Um, with the Vargarians. So let's see. So his idea was diametrically opposed transhuman orthodoxy between mechanical and biological body modifiers. Those that engage in both mechanical and biological modifications are considered abominations by both factions, and the taboo does seem somewhat warranted, as those that engage in the taboo have a tendency to be driven insane. And also, like, your character would actually fall into one of those, whether they wanted to or not. So the Vargarians is a construct supremacist faction owing its name to a once great multi-dimensional empire that only vestiges of history are known. Purity is forged in fire. Membership to the lowest tiers of the faction may be extended to organic beings that are working toward perfection. These petitions referred to as hackers in the streets due to the tendency to hack off appendages and replace them with mechanical prosthetics. Apex Humanus, a faction cult devoted to self-bio-evolving beings. So I definitely like introducing those two, and I love the fact that he took the Vargarians, one of the things that we had made before, and put into our games, and like the idea that it is a vestige of what they were, like it's a shattered empire, but someone I guess people someone has found the lure about them, and like and they've decided that was the way, and have brought it back almost like a religion. And they're trying to like live in their image. So I think that's really cool. We talked about the idea of having like clockwork beings and warforged that may or may not be addicted to grind. And then the grind, like, it runs the vehicles, it powers the dome. The factories that make more grind is probably going to be run by it. Even like things like lighting for the city, probably is powered by grind. And anything else that we can think of, like if we're going to use black powder weapons, then they're going to be grind powder weapons instead. It's going to be very pervasive and very, very centric to the campaign.
So I a lot of fun, a lot of things with this game that's going to be different, and it's it's going to flavor some of the things that we're working on. With the website, with the videos, with the chats, for a little while. But it's not going to be all about this, because we've got other games going on. Just a handful of days we're going to be meeting for my game, which we're going to be doing. Life on a Boat. I almost said the wrong thing. I was going to say one of yours of Under the Sea, and I'm like, no,
that's right, Above the Sea, above.
I've been kind of like watching some things, since it kind of got mentioned. I went and seriously binged all of Pirates of Darkwater as per Dave's suggestion. I got a handful of movies that I'm gonna rewatch.
Did the Pirates of Darkwater hold up?
God's no.
Oh man,
it was the typical 80s 90s cheese. It had some cool. There's definitely some things that I have in my notes.
As long as there's monkey birds, I'm good.
I am putting monkey birds in there, just because it would be funny.
Yeah.
And
me.
What
did you think of the animation going back and watching it?
Animation was still good. I like the animation.
I feel like the animation was way ahead of its time.
It wasn't Arcane, but
yeah.
That would be hard pressed to have something like that all those years ago. It had all the hokey, crappy storyline nonsense that you would expect from a TV show, and they never solved it. They didn't get all of the items that they needed in order to save the day. But
someone had asked if I was taking inspiration from
from Repo.
Something. Oh, Parks. Did you take inspiration from Repo, the genetic opera, with the whole grind idea? I don't even know what that is. So, if I did,
So
not
no.
intentionally, but you mentioned Arcane, and definitely I do definitely find some inspiration with Arcane and
Hmm.
the hex tech in there.
Yep.
So, I feel like anything that would be could be hex tech in Arcane could be grind powered in Under the Dome.
I would completely agree with that. But yeah, I'm doing a nautical game. We're gonna figure out exactly what the life on the boat is like, what that means. I've I've begun writing like a kind of a questionnaire that I'm just gonna like take notes. They'll be go ahead and figure out who your character is and how we're gonna get everything connected. But it's like, okay, well, is it your guy's boat? If so, who runs it? Who does what kind of things? Do you have a crew? Or is it a boat that you are traveling on and something is eventually going to happen? Like all of the typical things that are out there, that you would have to kind of get to figure out, because like we're not going to start in a port. Like life is going to be on the boat,
Yeah.
so we're going to be out to sea at session one. um,
I am definitely going to. I'm definitely playing a character based off of a League of Legends character, off of kind of Nautilus from League of Legends. So I'm
okay.
playing a Warforged barbarian. I forget the name of the path though.
Okay.
Um, I have to. I have to. You went and found it for me again, but it was from the League of Legends crossover that they did.
Mhm. Yeah, I went and pulled it out at some point, but I saved it somewhere so that it wasn't lost in case you needed it.
Yeah, so I'm definitely gonna be doing that, and I think he's definitely gonna be fighting with a giant anchor.
That's gonna be fun.
We'll
I
have to
don't wait.
figure out mechanics for that.
I mean, I'm like, are we talking like, great sword, great axe, maul, like,
Yeah, one of those.
like, I mean, I'd be down for, like, it's a giant war pick. It's a two-handed D10 weapon.
Yeah,
Um, or like, okay, it's only two. You can only use two hands on it, and I don't care. Damage wise, you want to go die 10, die 12, 2d6. I mean, 2 die 6 is the best, but
yeah.
to me that's the least. That's the least thing that's out there. It just is like, okay, well, if that's your weapon of choice, it's going to be a scenario of, well, do you want something to happen to said ridiculous anchor, or like are you going to have to eventually pass that up for a legitimate weapon? Like,
Never. I would just be useless if it requires magic items to hit it, magic weapons to hit it.
but I mean, me, like there's always ways to, like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to turn this thing into something. Uh,
But yeah, so I think that barbarian path too gets a swim speed, which is very good for someone who's in the water.
mm.
I'm not so sure, how well Warforged swim, but
Well, I mean, you're not in like you're not like a metal man. Like you're Warforged are at its essence, they're like biological, like wood on the inside and
yeah.
coated metal on the outside. So like I think that's something people kind of forget about, which is why they can still be affected by certain things.
I have to send you the
Character,
Nautilus character.
sure.
Uh and you'll see. He's kind of
Sure.
ridiculous.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're probably not going to live up to the awesomeness that he is to start. Um, the one thing that we didn't remember to do this past Saturday was to kind of figure out campaign duration.
Oh yeah, that is a thing we normally do.
And like with the last game that I had set up, like it was open ended, and we were just going to go for whatever have you. Uh, but if there is, any kind of talk of are we sticking with these groups for the time being? More than one, game. And then it's a question of like, okay, well, if we're doing only one game, we would have to sync them up before we play flip flop again. That's just a wonky wonky.
Yeah. Well, I can definitely see in the next game, like Carlos even maybe taking over and GMing for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then in our other game, I'm not sure if anyone else would. I mean, there's definitely people that are capable, right? Like,
Right.
yeah, but I don't know that they'd want to dedicate the time to it.
I mean, no offense to the group. I think there are people who have the capability, just maybe not the interest. There's others
Yeah.
that I don't think they have that desire to run for this kind of caliber. So I think there's a little bit of an intimidation, but everybody at the table has GM. So
Yeah. I guess it's only the other table where we're short on GMs.
right, yeah, that one we've got 2 players, and no offense to your wife, my sister, but she's still rather new to the game.
She's a filthy casual. You can say
when
it's all right.
when I kind of joked about like her running a game, she stared daggers at me like, "What on earth are you talking about?" And Fatima literally won campaign, so it's like,
she's an expert. It's fine. I would let her run. Well, you know what? Like, this keeps coming up in my live chats a lot. It's like a lot of people I have on, they're like doing actual plays and podcasts and streams and creating content and writing stuff. And 5e is their first game.
yeah,
Like, so like they're all relatively new and just jumping in. It's weird, like from our era of gaming, because they're always felt like there was like. And it's probably self-imposed. Part of it's just self-imposed, but like these bars that you had to like clear before you could get to the next part. Like now I can now I can GM, right? Because I've been doing X for this long, and like they're all like imaginary. It doesn't really matter.
right.
There's plenty of people who are like, I want to play D&D. I don't know anyone plays D&D. I'm getting these books and making my friends all play D&D with me.
Well, back then there was almost an expectation of like when you sit in that chair, you are expected to know the rules. You are expected to be able to mitigate, the situation, or not mitigate, but to like, figure out what the rules call is going to be if you don't happen to know it, and that then sticks for the duration of the game. And there's some people who just weren't ready to step up and do that kind of stuff. Whereas now, like, the number of times that I've seen the DM at a game look to a fellow player and be like, you know the rules better than I do. What is the deal here? It's like, oh, that's okay. That's not a problem to have that kind of stuff happen. To have a DM not be the master of the rules is okay. And sometimes like, okay, well, the rule call gets called out and the DM's like, yeah, I don't like that. Let's go in this direction instead. And the game keeps moving on. So I'm down with that kind of aspect if it's going to allow for more people to kind of get up there, and it gives the freedom to just be like, look, I can be creative. I'm not going to memorize a whole bunch of rules.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you definitely hear a lot of people are like, I run games. I'm a IGM. I've never read any of these books. I mean, and like, in all fairness, like, if you're having fun and the people you're playing with are having fun, I guess it's okay. I mean, who am I to say?
And that's the real, that's the goal at the end of the day, is everybody wants to have fun. And mechanics aside, role playing aside, if everybody at the table is having fun, then fuck it, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, it's a game, right? At the end of the day, like, it is about hanging out, hopefully with people you want to spend time with and doing something you all enjoy together. If that's not what it is, and you're still doing, I don't know why you're here. I don't know why you're doing this. Yeah, you should. This game should be played with people that you want to spend time with and enjoy their company. It's like, some people drink beer and watch football. We roll funny shaped dice and eat Cheetos or whatever,
So we kind of we got to that time. I got no official business of this week. The giveaway finally went out this week. I could have technically, if I was up for a 2-hour drive, I could have taken it to the dude. He's up in Central Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was kind of cool. Hey, I actually added to the Vault of Magic. You want me to sign it? He's like, oh, hells yeah. I thought that was kind of cool. Did
you sign where your thing is? Where your
item was? I signed. I believe it was page 12.
Yeah,
where the armor of the Nagubo is.
They couldn't put you on page 11.
I know. 11 is my number.
I feel like Wolfgang did that intentionally. Just one off.
I am fairly certain there was no slight intended. It was just the way the magic items, kind of fell.
In my head canon.
No, I mean,
Ted's favorite number is 11 for people that don't know. If you care. Now you know. If you don't care, now you know. But like you said, it is that time. It's 9:00. We'll be back here tomorrow night playing our Cypher System game. We're playing a superheroes game, Nobody's Heroes. It's a blast. Steven is a fantastic GM. We've expanded our cast a little bit on that show. And we've got one session under our belts, and it was a ton of fun. I felt like the people in the chat had a really good time watching us be ridiculous, because those characters are mostly ridiculous. We are just a tier above the Tick, right? Not like just barely above the Tick with our character concepts and ideas. I mean, one of them literally has a pot leaf on their face for their mask, so there's that. So we'll be there doing that. And tomorrow during the day, I'll be back with another guest in the live chat at noon. We actually have a full week this week of Monday, Tuesday, which Monday already happened, but also Thursday and Friday. So there's people that come hang out with us. If you got nothing better to do, you can come chat and ask questions. Also, I feel obligated to mention we still have a Kickstarter going on. It is fully funded and growing from here. So with that, until next time, everyone, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.